Hey there, second graders. Our story this week is called The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs. It is on page 384 in your Journeys book. So if you don't have that out, please grab it so you can follow along with me. Just a couple things to talk about before we read. This type of story is called a biography, and you might remember what that means because we've read some of them before. Biographies tell about events in a person's life. So they're true. They are nonfiction, they're real, they tell about a real person. So this lady and the little dog, they are actually real people, and the story is about them. And we're also going to focus on the essential question: how do you know if something is a fact or an opinion? We've done lots of practice with this year, right? Facts can be proven, right? They are true. You could research them, you could look them up. They could be proven to be true, right? And opinions, not the case. It's what somebody thinks, but not everybody might think that. So we're going to look for some facts and opinions as we read The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs. First page of the story. And if you notice in this story, there are some like painted or drawn pictures, and then there are some actual real pictures that are put in the story. A long, long time ago, there was a little dog named Trey. He was black and white all over. He had friendly brown eyes and a very wiggly tail. Trey lived in England. Trey was a real dog, and this is an honestly true story about him. Trey loved two things most in the whole world. First, he loved Mary Anning. She was 12 years old and lived with her family in a small cottage near the beach in Lyme Regis. Secondly, Trey loved going with Mary to dig for fossils. So there are our two main characters. We've got Mary, a little girl, and Trey, the dog. I'm going to ask you a couple things. Trey was black and white all over. Is that a fact or an opinion? Did you say fact, right? You can even look at him and you can see that he is black and white all over. Now here's this one. He had friendly brown eyes. Is that a fact or someone's opinion? What do you think? Did you say opinion? If it just said he had brown eyes, that would be a fact, right? But the word friendly, that's an opinion word, right? Not everybody would think that they're friendly eyes. And he loves looking for fossils. So what are fossils anyway? They are the remains of animals and plants that died a long time ago. There's a fact about fossils. When a leaf or bone gets pressed between layers of sea mud, it leaves an imprint. After many, many years, the mud hardens to rock. What do you think made this fossil in the picture? Maybe a seashell, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking of. It looks like one of those spirally seashells. And they get made when the mud and rocks get pushed together and they make these imprints. It's a fossil. Next page, 388. Trey and Mary knew that they would find the very best fossils high up on the cliffs around the beach. They climbed up there every day. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Mary used a small hammer and chisel. Tap, tap, tap. With these tools, Mary carefully cut fossils out of the cliff, just as her father had shown her. Trey watched as she placed the fossils in her basket. Most of them looked like seashells. Mary and Trey sold them as souvenirs to the tourists that came by stagecoach to swim at the beach near their home. Do you remember what souvenirs means, that vocabulary word that we learned? Right? Just something that you buy or you take to remind you of a trip. And she's got a basket full of fossils. One day, Trey and Mary discovered some very large bones sticking out of the rocks. They were huge. Trey growled and tried to dig the bones out. Mary used her hands to brush away the loose dirt. Trey, we've discovered a monster, she declared. The bones were much too big for Trey and Mary to remove by themselves. I'll go for help, Mary said. You stay here, Trey. Trey barked loudly and sat down in front of the bones. He was a very good guard dog. Look what they found. What does it look like? Kind of looks like almost like a bird, but with a lot of teeth, right? With a really long beak. And Trey is going to guard it while Mary goes to find help. Look at the next page. Look at they found, look how big that fossil was, right? Mary ran all the way back to town and asked some grown-ups to help her. Trey and I have found something really special in the cliff, she told them. Just wait and see. Something really special. Is that a fact or an opinion? That's an opinion. Even though you might agree that it's special and Mary thinks it's special, maybe not everybody does, okay? When the men saw the giant rib bones in the side of the cliff, they were amazed. What a beast, they cried. Look at those sharp teeth. Is it a crocodile, one man asked, or a stubby whale? We don't know what it is, Mary admitted, but we know it's something special, don't we, Trey? Trey yipped and wagged his tail. A rich man who lived nearby heard about the sea monster. He hurried to see it for himself. I'll buy it, he cried. I will give it to the British Museum in London. Do you know what it is? Mary asked. It's called an... Now, if we don't know how to say this word, if you look in the parentheses, it tells you how to pronounce it so we can sound it out together. Ichthyosaur. Ichthyosaur. It's called an ichthyosaur, the man told her. That means fish lizard, he explained. It's like a dinosaur with fins. So they found an ichthyosaur. Is that a fact or an opinion? That is a fact. It's right there. There's the ichthyosaur. It's like a big lizard, right? But it's got fins like a fish so it can swim. The amazing news spread about the gigantic fish lizard and the dog and little girl who had found it. Soon, many strangers came to Lyme Regis, where Mary and Trey lived. They all wanted to hunt for fossils too. The men wore tall top hats. The women wore frilly bonnets. They carried pretty umbrellas called parasols. Mary shook her head and smiled. She rubbed Trey's soft ears. They watched the strangers together. They don't have the right tools, Mary whispered. They are wearing the wrong kinds of shoes. Aren't they silly, Trey? Trey yipped and chased his tail. So Mary thinks that they are kind of silly. They're not wearing the proper clothing to look for fossils, right? But saying that they are silly, is that a fact or her opinion? Her opinion, right? But they're all there looking for fossils. Curious scientists visited Lyme Regis too. One man came from the university in Oxford. His name was William Buckland. He went to the old carpenter shop where Mary and Trey sold their fossils. Can you show me where you found your ichthyosaur, young lady? He asked politely. Do you think you could find the exact spot again? Trey can find it, Mary boasted. You think the dog's going to be able to find that spot? Why do you think the dog can find it better than Mary? You know, dogs have a very good sense of smell, right? So he can follow his nose back to the spot where they found it. Together, Mary and Mr. Buckland followed the little dog across the beach and up the cliffs. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Suddenly, he yipped. Then he sat down. Mary pointed. It was the exact place where she had discovered the strange fish lizard. What an intelligent dog, Mr. Buckland declared. Trey wagged his tail. We are on 396. Look what they found. Another one. Another really big one. Trey and Mary continued to dig for fossils. They were very careful. Mary watched for falling rocks like her dad told her. Trey looked out for storms and high tides. Then one day, they discovered another giant creature. Look, Trey, Mary cried. Is it a sea dragon? Trey sniffed the skeleton and snapped at it with his teeth. The creature had a long, long neck. Its backbone was like a humped turtle shell. Instead of feet and legs, it had 4 large paddles. But it wasn't a sea dragon. Mr. Buckland called it, let's sound it out together, use the parentheses, plesiosaur. A plesiosaur. He's got a really long neck. And then it's got kind of like a hump, like a turtle shell. And you can see it had big paddles, not feet. And it's called a plesiosaur. And now a real picture. One day, Trey and Mary found a fossil that no one in England had ever found before. This one had huge bony wings like a bat and a long, sharp jaw. Trey growled. It looks like a gigantic flying lizard, Mary declared. The scientists thought so too, and that's why they named it a pterodactyl. Maybe you already knew that. It's a pterodactyl. That means lizard with wings. Over the years, Trey, Mary, and Mr. Buckland became good friends. They showed him where to find the best fossils in Lyme Regis. So the question, stop and think. What fact do you learn about Mary's find? We know they named it a pterodactyl, right? Lizard with wings. And what is her opinion about it? Right? She thinks they're the best fossils and that they're very special, right? $3.99, next page. Mr. Buckland brought books about dinosaurs for Mary. He brought beef bones for Trey. Mary, with Trey on her lap, studied her books every day. She's getting older, isn't she? She's not a little girl anymore. When Trey's whiskers turned gray and Mary was all grown up, they still collected fossils and sold them in the old carpenter's shop. There were boxes and baskets filled with fossils on the floor and on the shelves. Some of the fossil creatures were so big, they couldn't fit through the door. Sometimes children and tourists stopped in to buy fossils of ancient sand dollars or tiny fish and curly shells. Many scientists came to the shop to buy fossils too. They brought carts and wagons to haul away the really large ones. So they continued to find fossils as they got older. Last page. Trey and Mary Anning became very famous. Today, if you go to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see the large fossils they discovered together. So the Natural History Museum in London, that's an actual place, that's a fact. You can see some of their discoveries there. You can also see this famous painting of Mary holding her fossil basket and Trey, the dog that dug for dinosaurs. I hope you enjoyed that story this week. After you reread it by yourself or with someone in your family, you have some facts and opinions that you're going to find in the story, and also some facts and opinions that you're going to sort. They are in our Google Classroom, and then there's a little comprehension quiz you can take as well. And if you want to practice taking AR quizzes, go ahead and take one on this one after you reread it. Bye.